our students who have had lots of involvement with the Allwin Initiative for Corporate Citizenship, and Pat Palmiato, who is the director of the Allwin Initiative for Corporate Citizenship. It's just great to have you guys come in and take some time out of your Saturday to meet with alumni and talk to them about, I think, was incredible information you're about to share. So thank you, and Pat, I'll let you take it from here.
Great. Thank you, everyone, and we're very, very happy to be here and give you a little bit of information about the Allwin Initiative. As you talk with alumni, some of you have known about it, some of you have been involved in it, and for others it's new. It started in 2001, named after Jim Allwin, class of 1976. Jim passed away 2 years ago, as some of you may realize. So what are we for? What do we do? Students in their first year and even their second year will take lots of courses on very specific subjects aimed at providing a lot of expertise. Our role is to help students, and then as alumni, put it all together and think of the big complicated questions, primarily the intersection of what business has to offer and what society expects. We know that with everything going on in the world today, there's a lot of questions about corporate responsibility, there's a lot of questions about the environment, there's an incredible number of questions about personal ethics and business ethics, as you heard from Professor Rick Shreve this morning. And what should business do and how should it be engaged in the community? So through actual experience, through providing perspective, we hope to be able to prepare students for the questions and the issues that they'll face later on in their careers and their lives. We do it through a lot of different kinds of programs.
There you go.
Okay. And so bringing in guest speakers, working for academic credit, both in projects and starting with the first year class. All students will have to take at least a mini course from an array of courses that focus either on ethics or social responsibility. And my way of thinking about it is, how are you going to deal with the question of the other? Other people, other issues, other places, and questions. We have lots of examples of direct experience through the work that these students have done that they're going to tell you about, and projects and programs and internships. And so we feel as though we provide an opportunity for students to make an impact. We also have a number of different programs that provide financial support, and we give personal support as well to individual students to help them reach their career interests, their goals. Numbers. It's a business school, so here's our 2x2 matrix. Thinking of the numbers of people, and we think about few and many, and whether it's an introduction, which we call experience, or perspective, or something deeper in experience. And you can see that we are, through our day during orientation, reaching the entire first year class. Starting with this course, we will reach every single class again, and then counting up last year, the number of students that attended visitor talks, you can see is over half, plus the number of people that participate in the annual auction to raise money for nonprofit and public sector internships is half or more. That's probably a pretty conservative number. Andrea will tell you a little bit about the Business and Society Conference, and then there are a number of different student organizations that we are very involved with, and Matt will tell you a little bit about the Energy Club and the things that they have been doing. And then you can see, and you can ask questions later about some of the other programs that reach people much more deeply and are smaller numbers. So I'm going to stop talking there. That's the introduction. And then I'm going to stop pressing this thing and let Andrea talk about what she's done with us and why.
My name's Andrea Schwartz. I think that you guys have my bio somewhere, but I'll give a brief introduction of who I am and why I involved in Business and Society Conference, along with a handful of initiatives that Allwin supports. So I came to business school with a quote-unquote non-traditional business background. I had been working in government affairs in DC, and then also had worked for an NGO in West Africa. And so came to business school to get core business skills, but wanted to keep my focus on social impact and public affairs while I was here. And so learned about the Business and Society Conference right when I stepped onto campus. And what this conference is it's a completely student-run. We're in the 8th year of doing it. It started in 2002. It's a conference that we put on in the winter time, in January, February. And we invite business leaders from around the globe to come to Tuck and speak on pressing issues of social impact. So past conference topics have included oil and water. Last year was a pretty provocative theme of the conference called "Is Capitalism Sustainable?", which definitely raised a few feathers and made for a lot of interesting conversations. But what I like about this conference is it really pushes the envelope. And yes, we're learning about major issues in business and really how to become business leaders. But then this conference kind of allows us to take a different perspective of what's going on around the world. And so this year, our theme will be along the lines of resources and sustainability. So we're going to be looking at resources in the finance world, in the human capital world, and in the natural resource world. And basically, because this is completely student-run, we actually spend pretty much all year. So as soon as the conference ended for us in January last year, we started thinking about this year's conference a year from now. And so we're kind of in the middle of planning right now. The first year's just started, and so we're kind of taking them under our wings as we're going with the planning. But it's a really exciting thing to be involved in. And I personally am heading up the Finance and Fundraising Committee. So my responsibility is connecting with our sponsors and kind of recruiting new sponsors every year. What's really rewarding about this role is that we actually do have a core group of corporate sponsors that give us money every year, and I think it's a testament to how well the conference goes that these sponsors keep coming back. And among the top sponsors are Waste Management, Deere & Company, and Eaton Corporation. So I think it means a lot to us to have those core sponsors. And you might ask what the point is and why sponsors would be involved in giving thousands and thousands of dollars for our conference. And it's really twofold. One, it's a lot of these corporations are building their own social impact mission, and this aligns closely with what they're doing and allows them to be on panels and part of keynote speeches where they either get to showcase what they're doing and then also participate in panels and learn from other companies that are also on campus. And then also there's the recruiting perspective of getting to meet with students, holding office hours, and really and looking for people that to join their companies. So that's Business and Society Conference in a nutshell. And then I also wanted to touch on the Reeves Board Fellows Program, which is something else I've been involved in through Allwin. And the Board Fellows Program allows students to sit on a local nonprofit board for your second year. And I think that there's about 30 or 40 students in the second year class that are doing it this year. It's a really cool opportunity to have a board perspective as a young business leader where you wouldn't necessarily be jumping into that right after graduating, especially since a lot of boards, your role would be a huge fundraising stake. So my specific nonprofit is called Bonnie Clack.
It's tricky. Look at the arrows and click the right arrow.
There you go.
You're there.
You go.
You have an extra here. No.
I really need to change.
Maybe it's a little pen.
No one's there.
Okay, back. It's on.
So, Bonnie Clack stands for Car Loans and Counseling, and it's a local nonprofit in the Upper Valley. What's really cool about it right now, and I didn't know about this when I was applying for it in the spring, but they actually just got recognition by the White House for what they're doing, and Obama invited them to the White House and kind of showcased them as a great sustainable business model. What they do is they target low-income and needy families who want to break the cycle of making bad and poor financial decisions through helping them get car loans. And I think that this is a really interesting area. There's a lot of times this specific part of the population goes to get car loans and they are not familiar with the financial terms and end up getting, these ridiculous deals where the car lasts for 6 months but they're paying for it for 10 years, and it's a really sad thing. And so this nonprofit is basically helping this segment of the population. And for me, I got to sit in a couple board meetings last spring and then another one yesterday. And it's really cool for me to see the issues that any nonprofit would be dealing with on a board and the challenges that they're facing. And then also, I'm taking on a project to think about a business model for expanding into Massachusetts. So I'll be adding specific value, hopefully, over the course of the year.
My name is Matt Hooks. I'm a second year here. I'm going to talk to you briefly about Tuck Builds and the Dartmouth Energy Collaborative. Tuck Builds is a pre-orientation program that was started, I believe, 5 years ago. We just finished our 5th. It was a student-initiated idea where, before coming to Tuck for orientation, a group of first-year students goes out to the community and participates with 2 organizations in the Upper Valley, one being Habitat for Humanity, where they're building new houses in the Upper Valley. The other one is a local organization called Cover. They're involved in doing home repair and weatherization for sort of low-income residents of the Upper Valley. So this year we had 24 individuals who are going to be, the week before orientation, come up and work on 2 projects here. There was extreme interest. I think about 75 first years wanted to participate in the program. Unfortunately, the organizations we work with don't have the capacity to take in 100 volunteers in 1 week, so we do unfortunately have to limit the numbers, but it's a very popular program. I did it last year and was running it with 3 other second years this year. They made a tremendous amount of progress, and it's really a great opportunity for people to come up to school beforehand. They not only interact with the community, but it's a great opportunity to sort of get to know a strong segment of the population in a nice sort of working relationship right off the bat. In addition to just going out and having these interactions, there are also dinners that are hosted by faculty throughout the week. So it's a nice opportunity to get to know some faculty right away. We have alumni speakers who come up and talk about their experiences working in sort of corporate responsibility in corporations, or whether it's nonprofit work that they do on their own. It's really, we've come at sort of a lot of different facets of sort of the nonprofit and community service and interacting with your classmates. So it's a great experience. I know Allwin has really taken a lot of lead in promoting it and allowing us to continue to run it for 5 and now 4 years after this. So the other thing I'd like to talk about is the Dartmouth Energy Collaborative. The Dartmouth Energy Collaborative is a student organization that was started 2 years ago by Pace Rowley and Ted Wilson. The reason it's not the Tuck Energy Collaborative is they started this organization and felt that they wanted to take advantage of all the resources that we have here in the Upper Valley to look at the problem of energy and climate and sustainability. So the organization is not only students from Tuck, but students from Thayer Engineering School. There's some undergraduate representatives, as well as people from Vermont Law who make up sort of this organization, so that we can look at the energy question from not only a business perspective, but a technical and legal and policy perspective. There are a number of, we have meetings and sort of lecture series. We've had visitors who have energy experience come to speak to us. We also go out in the community and visit sites. One of the things that Allwin has helped us with a lot, and that's going to be really exciting, is we have recently been, or Tuck has been recently accepted as an official observer for the United Nations Climate Change Conference, which is going to be in Copenhagen in December, where they're going to be hopefully ironing out the successor to the Kyoto Protocol and a climate change agreement moving forward. So Tuck will be sending a delegation of probably 8 students over there for a week to sort of take in the whole experience and meet with other organizations who will be there. And it should be a fantastic learning experience and a very unique opportunity to be hopefully will be a pretty significant landmark climate change bill. We're also involved in, a lot of people have gone on to careers in energy, and we definitely have an emphasis on trying to work with people and provide a lot of inroads into getting people into careers in energy. A lot of people have gone on to startups who are working in small business in the energy world, so that is the Dartmouth Energy Collaborative in a nutshell.
The part of what the Allwin Initiative supports is internships that use business skills in the nonprofit and public sector. And since 2002, we have a student-run annual auction that raises money, and over the course of all those years, we have helped support over 100 internships. And so these are the example, this is some of the ones, the organizations that students work for, and they range from issues of inner city development, which is what ICIC is, Global Impact, which raises money for people in developing countries, Ashoka's Social Entrepreneurs, the Student Conservation Association, so it's an environmentally focused group that is doing projects with the National Park Service. And then we're going to learn a little bit more about the experiences that the students had in Educational Pioneers and in Julian's organization in Chile that we sent 2 students to work on this summer. So whoever's slides are up.
Hi everyone, my name's Chip Franklin, and I'm fortunate enough to spend my summer, this past summer, working with Education Pioneers. It's a nonprofit based in Boston. I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a second. But basically, Pat and the Allwin Initiative really helped me, sort of find my way here. I came into Tuck really wanting to focus more on education. I was fortunate enough, my previous job, consulting to do a lot of projects with New York City's Department of Education, Chicago Department of Education, sort of get into that a little bit. So I wanted to spend my summer working on education issues and thinking about that sort of stuff. So in talking with Pat and going out through the Allwin network last year, sort of found Education Pioneers, which is this really incredible organization. It's a not-for-profit. They're based in Boston. They're currently operating in, I think, 7 or 8 cities around the country. And it's more or less a leadership development program. There are 40 people. You can see that great picture on the bottom. It's my cohort this summer in Boston. 40 of us from all sorts of academic backgrounds. So everyone's sort of a graduate student in graduate school of some sort. A lot of law school folks, business school, about half of the program, policy school, education school. So really anyone who is pursuing some sort of advanced degree and is interested in education. So we sort of got together that group of 40 and really talked and hammered out a lot of the really big issues in education all summer. So we had panels and lots of pretty amazing speakers come to talk to us. And that way sort of really dug into some of the big issues in education, which was a really great experience to, Matt was talking about the energy collaborative, sort of tackling these issues from a bunch of different perspectives, and that's sort of the point of the Education Pioneers summer cohort experience, is to really get a bunch of people with different backgrounds talking about that stuff and thinking about some different angles. The second part of that is, go ahead, one is we also work with some organization that's working in the education sector. So as part of my Education Pioneers summer, I was placed with the Achievement Network, which is another really amazing nonprofit working in Boston. They help district and charter schools be more data-driven in their instruction, so it sounds good, it really hits all the right buzzwords, but they do really incredible work. They currently work with about 20 schools, district and charter schools in the Massachusetts area. Next year they're growing to 70 schools and 150 schools after that. So they're really blowing out their model. They're getting a lot of attention from some of the big funders like Gates and Bell Foundation, and doing really incredible work. The schools they partner with see really significant increases in achievement, and continue to work with them over and over. It's a pretty valuable relationship. So working with the Achievement Network, I got to sort of bring some of my consulting experience to bear and basically help them with their growth strategy. You can see what the planned growth they have is pretty ridiculous, and had a lot of issues they were thinking about and how to make that work as they blow out their model from a Massachusetts network-based situation to really all over the country. So it was a really amazing experience where I got to sit around all summer with the CEO and the founder of this 8-person nonprofit in Boston, and sort of talk strategy and talk shop and be really involved in the day-to-day details of how they're actually going to make that happen. I think they're looking really good. And I won't say thanks to my help, but it was a really amazing experience. Anytime you can sort of sit around and have those sort of discussions with senior leadership is an amazing experience. And to do it in a small nonprofit in the education sector is sort of that much more incredible. So it's a really great summer experience. Thanks to Pat and the Allwin initiative sort of helped me find my way there. But if you guys have questions later, I'd be happy to talk about education in general. And this is something I think that Tuck students in general really have an alignment here that there's a lot more we can do to get people focused on this sector. Thanks.
I was waiting to come back. As Pat said before, Mariana and myself had the opportunity to join Julian's non-profit back in Chile. The name of its non-profit is Acción Emprendedora. It's an organization that is focused in developing overcoming poverty through a program of entrepreneurship coaching and entrepreneurship assistance. The model works like you find an entrepreneurship or entrepreneur that has a business plan or has an idea of a business plan, and Acción Emprendedora provides them with a course of different tools like accounting, finance, marketing, operations, and then when they see that the entrepreneur is dealing with the problem itself, they go and coach them while they implement the business plan or while they execute it. So they have the education part and the assistance part. And right now they were working in developing an additional service for them that was the implementation of the microfinance institution that would aid financially these people. Before, Acción Emprendedora used to help them by following them to the formal channels of financing or getting them to meet other microfinance activities. And right now, Acción Emprendedora is really focused in adding an additional value of creating its own microfinance institution. In that sense, Mariana and myself worked in two different projects. The one that I was involved was to develop a new strategy for this non-organization because it was created in 2003 and the past 5 years it has grown at a very fast pace. The amount of people that they are coaching has increased rapidly, and the people itself that is needed to manage an organization has also increased. So there has to be a redefinition of the business model, the objectives, the mission, and the strategies per se to apply those or to reach those objectives. In that way, I worked very close with Mariana and the rest of the people in Acción Emprendedora developing this new strategy. Also coached every single day by Julian in a very good way. And that got me to talk with a lot of people. I had the privilege to be a coach for one of the entrepreneurships there, and it was very rewarding to see how the amount of tools that we learned here at Tech and the amount of things that we learned here, when we translate them to a small company or a company that only needs 1% of those amount of knowledge and the repercussion of the result that you can create in that, it's amazing. The feeling that you have that when you see that people with, I don't know, if you help them to develop a simple, very simple cash flow, and they realize that that can change the way they develop their business in a huge way, and you see that, for me, it wasn't that hard to provide that help, but the result was very impressive. And that kind of opportunities that we have there working in this kind of situations taught us the power that we have with the tools that we have here. We are not being prepared only to be in the business world and succeed there. We are also being taught here to make a difference in every single aspect of life. And that is what Tech Gives represents for me this summer. I was able to use all the tools that I learned here in Tech, and I was able to see how those tools impact in the way that I'm telling you right now. On the other hand, it was an amazing experience also because I was in touch with people from other schools. We were lucky to be with 2 other MBA students from Stanford, and considering all the people that came and left while we were there, we had the experience to also participate with 14 undergrads. 2 of them were from Dartmouth, the rest mostly from Duke. we're going to change that. And that whole experience was something that I wasn't expecting, and that gives made it possible to change actually perception of everything that I'm doing here at Tech.
I worked at the same organization myself. Before coming to Talk, I was an architect. I worked in design, and I had my own company to do this small company with other architects. So when I learned about Acción Emprendedora in Juliana, I thought it was a great opportunity that I could bring my new business knowledge from Talk, my experience as an entrepreneur in Brazil, to other people in South America. And also I was looking to getting into a consulting career after Talk. So Juliana, who's a project manager, helped me all the way to structure the project that was doing there. So it basically, I think it helped me in two ways. First, I was able to help other people there, other entrepreneurs, with my experience and my knowledge. I watched class, I did a study group with entrepreneurs there. And second, I helped me greatly in my career because I came from a completely different background, and now I have a consulting experience. So afterwards, I got another summer job with a consulting company in Brazil in sustainable buildings, and which I'm probably returning to. So I think it was a great opportunity for myself, for my career, and to bring to South America all the knowledge on entrepreneurship that we learned here in the U.S.
So we wanted to give you some ideas and examples of, if I can move this chair here, stand up so it's easier, of the ways in which the programs that the Allwin Initiative has developed over the last 8 or so years manifest themselves in real stories of real students. So we've given you a lot of information. What questions do people have? What questions do you think your alumni, friends, and colleagues are going to ask you that we can help answer? Yeah.
How has the, actually, it's more of a question to students,
Yeah.
how has, or has the Allwin Center and its activities, how has it shifted at all, if at all, kind of the emphasis of first and second year students away from what now maybe I'm dating myself, from a focus on Wall Street, finance jobs, and that kind of focus, which was and continues to be a significant focus, I suspect, for Tuck grads. How has it focused people's attention into looking at other alternative careers, other paths? And are you, and is your answer, which we'll listen to, is it representative of what other students would say at Tuck? Are there certain groups of people at Tuck that are focused on kind of the Allwin's initiatives and careers that imply to that? Is there a separate group at Tuck that really pursues a different path, which is what I call the traditional Wall Street finance path? Just curious.
I'll let you guys answer.
I don't know whether, I feel like it's very easy to come to Tuck and sort of to listen to everyone and say, I gotta go get a consulting job, or I gotta go get a finance job. It seems like it's an easy sort of wave to get caught up in. And I'm not sure whether Allwin has changed people's perspective or just sort of enabled people to come in with their own sort of unique idea and sort of path about where they want to do, and sort of lets them pursue that. I know I came in not planning on getting a consulting or finance job, but the Allwin Initiative has definitely sort of provided the support to sort of kind of opens people's minds that say, okay, all of these things are options, and there are things here at Tuck that we do within that scope. And it's more of, I would say, a door opener than maybe a shift of perspective, at least speaking from my perspective, that it was not something that awakened me to something. It just definitely allowed and supported me to pursue those kind of things that I wanted to when I came to Tuck.
You had asked if there are different groups that sort of fall into those buckets, and I think for everyone it's at least a broadening of the conversation, because you're exposed, as Matt said, you're sort of exposed to all these ideas and other thoughts when you get here. I think that just having Allwin, even just sort of emails that you see in general sort of pervasiveness of these sort of conversations around broadens the overall experience for everyone, or for the conversation for everyone. But then there's certainly a subset of people that probably include all of us anyway, and a bunch of other people that come in specifically looking for that stuff. I think it serves both of those people pretty well. But it definitely broadens the overall conversation pretty significantly.
Pat, can you just comment on just some of the other programs in development or things that you're thinking about behind the scenes right now that kind of haven't made it prime time yet?
One of the things that we're doing that we didn't write about in this, on these slides, is increasing interaction with executives. And next week, week after next, we'll be hosting 30 different executives, 18 companies, all vice presidents of environmental sustainability, environmental affairs. And we have Professor Anant Sundaram, who's the faculty director of this program. And we're looking at the intersection of financial metrics and shareholder value with environmental practices within the firm. So we've got companies that range from 3M to Corning, Waste Management, Eaton, IBM, big companies. Their VPs are coming and they're going to be talking with each other and sharing things that deal with cost efficiencies, revenue enhancement, and then barriers to implementation. And what we're trying to do with increasing relationships with those kinds of people within firms is provide greater opportunities for students to hear about how that level person in the C-suite makes decisions, and then to begin to bring them into the classroom and do some research with faculty. We've got some opportunities for students to meet with them in small groups so they can talk with them. So we're looking at that as opportunities to increase all of this investigation of issues around the environment with our faculty. So that's kind of a new endeavor. When we first started, we started as a student idea, and the very first few years, any of you who were around then, was very, very student focused. We were not one of the research centers, and we are moving in the direction of combining this area of environmental issues with the research interests of some of the faculty.
What kind of reputation has the initiative developed in industry, and then also, do other business schools have comparable programs?
Other business schools, I talk with my colleagues at all the top business schools. We're all slightly different. Because Tuck is so small, we tend to do more things that cross spectrums. Ethics is a part of the Allwin initiative, as is environmental issues and social issues, where in some other schools you'll see 3 separate organizations, so we tend to do all of it. But all the top schools have organizations that pay attention to how business knowledge and skills can be used in the world. And the other question you asked about reputation, I think that some of the Wall Street Journal rankings and some of the Beyond Great Pinstripes rankings show that we contribute to the ethical mindset of students and their awareness of issues in the broader society. So I think we do well. We suffer in some rankings from the small size of Tuck because our numbers just aren't as big as some of the other schools. And we have long conversations with some of those people that are running those rankings about what really should be measured. Julian.
Yeah, I have 2 things actually, a plug and a best practice. Now, first I wanted to thank the Allwin initiative. Thank you, Pat. Thank Jim. Thank John Buckle, you 2 guys. The impact, they've been very modest in the impact they've had. Honestly, they changed the organization. The opportunity to have such high caliber help working for Acción Emprendedora, it's impressive. You're helping here the neediest of people in the neediest part of the world. So it's changing people's life, and thank you very much for that. Second, usually we get the question as agents, why should I give my money to Tuck and not to a nonprofit? Here you have the best scenario, you're doing both. And that's something when I go and ask for money and they ask me that, it's the Allwin initiative is at the top of my head. Here you do non-profit and you do your help tech, and that's a really cool thing that we can push.
And don't forget that Tuck is a nonprofit, right? let's not lose that perspective.
I think that's a great point to emphasize, and I was going to ask Dave, I mean, do we have any of the students on the website doing videos talking about their experience?
I don't know if we have any videos yet. Not yet, but I think that's coming. So
Because I think that would be helpful. I mean, what I'd like to do is leave the weekend here and be able to say, you know, gee, we listened to this student. Here's a video, a 3-minute video, the experience that they had and the influence that they had on this organization or this country, et cetera.
Well, depending upon how this video turns out right now, you may have that in fairly short order. But I think the dean is really encouraging all of the departments at Tuck to do more. You know, Pat calls it the V word. I mean, it's a buzzword at Tuck right now. All departments, starting with admissions, and it's sort of marching its way through. We're all being asked to get whatever we can on video and get it on the website, and then the bigger picture sort of coordination issue is how to design the website so that anybody can go on there and use a keyword search function, some kind of search engine. If you want to hear about Allwin, you plug in Allwin. If you want to hear about marketing, you just plug in marketing. If you get up to Kevin Keller or something like that. So that's the direction that we're headed. It's going to take a little bit of time to build to it, but you'll be seeing more of that as time goes on.
I would recommend also if there's politics involved or time frames around getting the V stuff up, just do a YouTube thing. Yeah. Send a link to the head agents. You don't know how to do it? Ask your kids.
We know how to do it. There's a Tuck quality control issue at play, I think. So.
But a lot of generations are used to the quick and dirty. They don't need video grade. Just from a messaging standpoint. I get your point.
We'll tell the team that. What we do have, Grant, is we have individual, each of the students write up one-page description of the organization they worked for and what they did and what they got out of it with a few pictures, so that we can have those, 8.5 by 11 sheets. So those things are definitely and will be on our website. We have some from last year there right now, so that you've got those stories that you can tell, and we can easily share what these guys have written, so that if you want those and get them to Jennifer or Dave, so that you can say, yes, here's an example of what Matt did or what Chip did, what Mariana did, and then you can say, and I got to talk to them and hear what they had to say.
I can see a potential rogue student initiative, Allwin initiative project developing to get YouTube videos up.
That would be good, because if they do it, then I don't get yelled at.
There's a new admissions video that we've heard of. I think it's coming out in the next couple of weeks. Yep. Or is Allwin got 30 seconds in there?
We've put our request in. We've given them ideas about Tuck Builds this year and all the work in orientation. This year in orientation, we wrote case studies on 27 different organizations in the Upper Valley and a challenge. So when students went, they started week 1 doing consulting. We don't call it that, we call it idea sharing. And listening to a local nonprofit talk about what why they exist, what the challenges are here in this region, what successes they've had, and then what's something they need help with. And we have heard amazing stories back from both the students and the executive directors about how 3 hours with a group of 5 to 6 very smart students can make a huge difference in getting them to think in other ways. And then from there, we have student consulting services that run again by a group of students that can do more. And then ultimately, you could get an intern, so that we help students realize how just in very small and important ways, the knowledge they're getting in business school can be applied. And we talk about the Upper Valley as just a microcosm of the world. So if we can get students engaged while they're here, then our hope and expectation is that when they go out And no matter where they end up living, any place in the world, they can see how their business knowledge and skills can be applied in a much broader context. And we're hoping that we see some very interesting stuff when we're in Copenhagen in December, and understanding and watching the negotiations between countries on climate change and economic issues. Ford?
Yes, I commend you all for finding the time away from your studies to get involved in good causes and social causes, but have any of you ever thought about doing a sustainability model on nonprofits? I sense in the popular press these days that if an organization is nonprofit, that's kind of considered goodness, and organizations that are in place to earn a profit are considered less than good. And yet, most of us realize that it's organizations that make a profit, that fund jobs, that also then provide the funds for the quote nonprofit institutions that are trying to do good things. But most nonprofit groups that I've been involved in through my life have all had the same common denominator, which is, number one, how do they measure their effectiveness? And number two, they're all hurting for money to sustain themselves. Have you thought about any of those issues? I mean, it's sort of taken the thing to another level.
I got involved with it a little bit at Action Emprendedora because I researched some fund sources, and they have many strategic projects that are being developed right now to become a sustainable organization. And I was reading the legislation, and they say that to be a non-profit, it's not that you can't have profit, but you have to reapply the profits in your own organization. And I think that's something that Action Emprendedora is on the right path to get to that point. And I think about it a lot right now. I'm not working on that, but I think there are some good ideas there to be sustainable.
It's a really interesting question. You talk about the stigma of being a for-profit company, especially in certain industry. I mean, in the education world, if you're a for-profit company, you're definitely stigmatized. You know, schools are much less likely to want to work with a big textbook company versus a small nonprofit that talks about how their focus is only on student achievement and stuff like that. So there's definitely a branding issue there. I mean, to the extent that it's going to change the revenue model, I don't know. The company I worked for this summer gets over half of their funding from schools to pay for their services. But I don't think they would be able to do that if they were a for-profit company, or at least it would be much harder to sell to make that happen. So you talk about sustainability, and you can be a non-profit, not-for-profit company or organization and still be serving customers and providing a service. But it is certainly an interesting question.
I was going to say, I think it's also sort of important to note that I think Allwin is not looking at these solely from sort of a nonprofit perspective, but is definitely trying to work with corporations and think about how in the for-profit world you can bring these considerations sort of into the fold of your organization, and so that there isn't a divide where there's for-profit companies and then there are nonprofit companies that take care of all the social issues. How can both organizations work together sort of with common goals in mind?
And to your point earlier, you how to quantify that benefit for a for-profit company. How do you, and what's the relationship between CSR efforts or environmental focus and companies' stock price performance and all that sort of stuff? Allwin definitely talks about that a lot.
And I will add, just from my perspective, and one of the nice things about the Allwin initiative, to your point, is that it's taking, I mean, this is a business school, right? And we're teaching business leadership education here. We've got great minds here. Now, whether there are these students who are interested in pursuing a not-for-profit path, or perhaps the majority of their students who are going to be pursuing a for-profit path, they all have access through Allwin to get on boards of nonprofits. So the Allwin initiative is delivering this kind of talent, which hopefully will make a difference in a variety of different not-for-profit institutions, at the same time training the students as to what nonprofits are all about at the board level in many cases. And so I think that sort of adds to the cycle of building sustainability into the not-for-profit model. And we're doing it arguably at a fairly small scale when you look nationally or globally, but it's, I think it's something that's very effective.
Yeah, I think we would do you a disservice if you think that the only thing we do is focus on nonprofits. The more important question that we wrestle with is very simply, what is the role of business in society, and how do the problems that cross borders, how does the sector, the business sector, relate to the social sector, relate to governments, and what happens within the United States, what happens in other countries, and what happens when you have businesses that cross all over the globe. We all know that people in leadership positions have got to deal with those issues, and how you deal with them and what those questions are continually changing. So my hope is that by exposing students to these things that don't have easy answers, they at least have had the practice of figuring out what to ask about or what to think about. I don't know whether, in the next 10 years we'll solve climate change, but the whole practice of how do you deal with something that has different policy views, different philosophical views, different scientific views, economic considerations, then the next issue that comes up for us in 10 or 20 years, these students will have had that practice and they'll be used to it and not be feeling helpless and hopeless about it, but ready to tackle whatever that issue is. And by engaging with nonprofits, we're giving people examples of smaller scale organizations that their ideas and their work can make a big difference in. Other questions?
Just more a statement. A number of us had the privilege of knowing or working with Jim Allwin, and I think he would be utterly thrilled with the work that you're doing and the work that you've done, Pat. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you.
Well, thank you all very, very much for coming today, and I think on schedule, we have a tuck hat for each of you. I think you're on the way for dinner later tonight, so we can make that.
Thank you. You have to wear the hat.
Thank you. Can I go hiking? Thanks for listening to us. And email any of the students or me if you have questions.
So that's it. Thanks a lot.
Oh, I forgot to tell people that I think in your packet is this publication, which has examples again of other things other students have done. If you need examples and you're asked questions by your classmates, there's other ones that are in here. And if you want to see how in heaven's name does all this stuff work together, there's the chart, and I think we gave you that chart. I'm a visual person, so I've got to lay it all out in a diagram.
Pat, can you mention the Allwin Award?
That's in here, yeah.
Oh, that's in.
Yep. There's an award that's named after Jim Allwin, and you can read the student that won it last year in the corner of this.
Thank you, Pat. So that we're a little bit ahead of schedule. That gives you some time to come down front, pick up a volunteer manual. Also, we've got inserts that go into the first solicitation mailing here. That if you want to grab some examples, you can see what we're going to be mailing out to different classes. There's the Overseer's Incentive Challenge cards, Tech Class Scholars, matching gift, and there's also, this perfect donor, this notion of people who have given every year since graduation. Pat, thank you again. Who've given every year since graduation, or every year since the tag began. We're going to put this in their acknowledgement list. So not up front, but after the fact. So we have samples of all of this. Also a reunion save the date bookmark, which is going into all of the solicitation, first solicitation pieces in October for reunion classes, so that it reminds them of the date October 1, 2, and 3, 2010. This has been terrific. I've enjoyed it, and we've got a little bit more this afternoon for those of you who want to take tours of the new buildings Charlie and Andy will walk you over there, and, it's maybe 10 or 15 more minutes of your time if you'd like to do that. I think they're fabulous buildings and worth seeing. So hopefully you'll take that opportunity. And then we are back in Stell Hall at 6:30 for cocktails, and then 7:30 for dinner in Bern. So I think that's it. Anybody have any questions?
Dave, you want to say, people who want to go on the tour, meet maybe outside?
Is that where you're going to meet them, right outside
Well,
here? Yeah.
might as well.
Why don't we do that right outside the classroom?
10 minutes or something.
Yeah, so pick up your things, let's say quarter to 4, meet up with Andy and Charlie. And
Sure. If you want to do that.
Great.